This country is blessed to have Americans like Brandon Stout, who make extraordinary sacrifices to keep us safe from harm.
Right as we were driving, the explosion hit, but we were told that Brandon was gone.
Could there have been a mistake?
I think about him every day.
I hear him say it. You're the only guy I know that can bring my son home.
Phil, welcome.
We really never got to say goodbye.
And I have to get that closure that I see them one last time.
The portrait represents his presence coming home.
I'm gonna put the last little touch on you.
Everything we do is all about the families.
That's where the pressure comes from. You don't know if your legs are going to be strong enough to hold you up.
Turn your box.
Unsure of every detail, his name, his rank, his kill date. Here's your son, our American hero, Army Specialist Brandon Stout. As an artist, this is the best way I know how to honor America's heroes, to celebrate their lives, and to bring them back home to their families. I'm Phil Taylor. I paint portraits of America's fallen soldiers.
It's gonna be a good day. One of my favorite times getting to meet the families is like nothing else. You get to spend time, bond, talk to them.
Artist Phil Taylor is on his way to meet with the family of Army Specialist Brandon Stout to learn more about Brandon so that he can paint a portrait that captures the essence of the fallen soldier. Phil's journey takes him to the farmlands of Michigan, to a small town called Kent City, just outside of Grand Rapids.
What a beautiful spread you've got here.
Yes. Welcome.
Phil Taylor.
This is my wife, Tracy.
How are you, sweetheart?
Thank you.
Oscar, how are you? World War II? Sir, it's an honor. Your home's absolutely breathtaking.
I look at the farms and the communities that thrive there, and it's everything that these guys went into service for. It's middle America all the way.
My goodness, well, I recognize something already. I see the service medal, Purple Heart, Bronze Star.
The moment where I'm looking at his uniform or his decorations or his house, I'm looking at a grander plan. What role am I here to fulfill? What job do I have to complete above and beyond their highest expectations?
Where was this picture taken?
That was in training.
Fort Dix, where they prepared to go to Iraq.
Yeah. Man, well, you can feel him here.
Army Specialist Brandon Stout was deployed with the military police to Iraq in October 2006, one of the bloodiest years in the Iraq War. Detonating explosive devices plagued Baghdad, and snipers were rampant. Brandon and a squad of combat military police were on the streets, manning checkpoints, enforcing curfews, and searching buildings for guns and contraband. They were also charged with training Iraqi police forces, which had been infiltrated by insurgents, so that they could secure their own country when the U.S. military departed.
Let's go in the dining room and look at some photo books and show you pictures of Brandon's life.
That sounds good. Beautiful windows, that view.
To the lake where Brandon would fish, and he loved fishing, so.
Oh,
yeah.
he's a fisherman.
We have 12 pictures of the same two fish. He caught them every other night, and we'd have to go down and take pictures of them.
That's great, man.
Brandon grew up in this house with the neighbor kids and sisters and brothers and friends and relatives, and it was one busy place. The busier it was, the happier he was.
A lot of muddy boots, and
Yep.
they'd always come in the kitchen. And
My mom
so
had to give him some cocoa or something afterwards.
It's just part of growing up with a lot of kids in the house.
But it was fun stuff, great stuff.
What led him into the military? What was the calling?
9/11 was the big deal. And he was not a fighter, he's not a warmonger, he's not a hater at all. He wanted to be prepared if his country needed him. When he went in, he wanted to be a chaplain. He felt the calling and he thought he'd witness best in that capacity. They said, well, we need military police. And he thought, well, you know what? Maybe I can witness just as well as a military police. The guys of his unit told me afterwards, when things went bad and things went wrong and our world fell apart, we all looked to Brandon. And when Brandon was taken, no one ever filled that void. The last thing that I said to Brandon was, go and be a bright light in a very dark place in the world. He assured me, he said, I will, Dad, I will. And he was.
Is there a feature, a part of his expression, his very presence that you think of?
You can always tell he's smiling by his eyes. He would light up a room when he came in.
Do you have within some of the more mature images a couple, Mom, that you would like maybe for me to consider painting?
Sure.
That's the smile.
You would like to see him happy and whole.
Yeah.
That's obvious.
That's a good one of his
Oh,
eyes,
that's a beautiful.
too. Yeah.
I can definitely use a part of that.
But I like him smiling.
Being here and just you guys spending time with you, sharing, seeing, is going to make all the difference when I get back to Texas and able to paint and restore your son. And I promise you, I won't let you down.
Yes.
I look forward to seeing it. We really don't have a lot of good pictures of him
Unfortunately.
in his uniform smiling.
I keep Brandon's dress uniform in amongst my shirts, and I see that every day. Really, the portrait, all this, isn't about a 23-year-old kid from Kent City, Michigan, dying in Iraq. It's honoring our war heroes and celebrating the life of an incredible witness for our Lord and Savior.
I got you covered.
After returning to Texas, Phil processes everything he has learned about Brandon and begins to incorporate it into his portrait.
Good morning there, my friend. Let's see if we can get that beautiful uniform in there. For me, the most profound single thing that stands out is his youthfulness. So, you were quite the fisherman, were you? I'm looking at your smile right now, thinking, yeah, you definitely got all the fish.
Phil continues work on Brandon's portrait, but there is a piece missing. The artist wants to know more about the military experiences that shaped Brandon.
It's not done in a single pass. It goes piece after piece after piece, and it can't be expedited.
Next, Phil's journey continues at a veterans home in Grand Rapids, close to where Brandon grew up.
And I scooted up in my chair and I looked out the window and the explosion happened.
Artist Phil Taylor is learning all he can about American hero Brandon Stout. He next speaks with Michelle Rudzitas, Brandon's team leader in Iraq, who has traveled to Grand Rapids to meet with Phil.
So tell me about some of the tattoos. I see some branding going on, specifically not only branding, but Brandon.
I got this 3 years ago. It's my prized possession, carry him with me everywhere I go.
I know, talking with Tracy and trying to get a feel for his charisma, she mentioned his laughter.
If you ask anybody, that's one thing they'll say they remember about Brandon is his smile or his laugh. It just comes from the gut, and it was just always like, ha 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 ha, and this big smile on his face. I mean, you could just be in the worst mood ever and, you know, hear Brandon and you're like, oh yeah.
He would lift you up.
Absolutely. And I wanted to go into combat with Brandon. That's who I felt comfortable and safe with. He was just an amazing soldier. I mean, the U.S. Army was lucky to have him.
Michelle recalls the night her Humvee was attacked as Brandon drove and their teammate Derek Gagne manned the guns.
We weren't supposed to work that day, but we got tasked to. We were getting ready to pass a site that's known for explosively formed projectiles. So I kind of held my breath and we drove past it. Right as we were driving past it, I can't remember if it was Brandon or Derek, but one of them said, I love you. And the other one said, I love you, man. And I scooted up in my chair and I looked out the window and the explosion happened. I unfortunately remember everything. It blew us off the road. The heat of the blast had fused my eyes shut, so I couldn't see. And everything else that was going on, you're just kind of, you're not there, but you're there. You don't know what to do. I woke up the next afternoon about 2:30, and there was a nurse standing to my left. And the first thing I asked her was, which one? I knew it was one of, I knew my legs were gone. And then my second question is, where's my guys? And then later that day, my squad and our captain showed up at the hospital that we were at. And that's when we were told that Brandon was gone.
January 22nd, 2007. It was about 8 p.m. and Mom and Elizabeth had went to the hairdressers. I saw a car drive in the driveway and I thought it was Tracy coming home, and so I didn't get up or anything. And the next thing I knew, I heard a knock at the door. And I got up and walked over and turned the porch light on, and there were two men dressed in army clothes. I remember looking in both of their eyes, and I knew. And I opened the door, and I let them in, and I just kept looking at them and saying, "Tell me it's not true." And they didn't say anything.
I knew something wasn't right, but I had to ask, is he injured, is he hurt? And they said no. And they said there's no mistake. It's Brandon. So I think it was the worst night of my life.
Because that was a pretty big hit. You lose your hero.
Coming up.
I hear him say it, "You're the only guy I know that can bring my son home." That's where the pressure comes from.
Tracy and Jeff Anderson lost their son, Army Specialist Brandon Stout, in 2007 when he was killed by an improvised explosive device in Iraq.
My heart was broke. Dying would have been an upgrade. I wrote a letter to the White House. It said, "I heard that the president mourns the loss of every soldier, and our son Brandon Stout was killed in action January 22nd, and Brandon believed in this mission."
He felt he was making a difference in Iraq, and he felt what he was doing was for the good.
Several months went by and I got a phone call from the White House. They were preparing one of President Bush's most important speeches on the surge. They wanted permission to use that email in the speech. He read the entire letter.
We believe this is a war of good and evil, and we must win, even if it costs the life of our own son.
And then the White House called my cell phone and asked me if I had time to speak with the president. And I could squeeze out a little time for that. So we visited with him. My wonderful brother David pointed out that perhaps the fact that Brandon died and then I wrote the letter helped the surge. Our death toll went way down after that. That saved other soldiers' lives.
At his studio in Texas, Phil Taylor puts the final touches on his portrait of fallen hero Brandon Stout before making the journey back to Grand Rapids to present it to his family.
Out of respect for you, commitment to what you did, you have a promise for me. I'm gonna give you everything I have. I'm gonna put the last little touch on you. Perfect. All right, baby. See you tomorrow. Have a good night, my friend.
So we're leaving this morning for Grand Rapids. I have to get my program finished up, and then we have to make sure everything is packed up properly so that it doesn't get damaged.
Phil and Lisa Taylor drive more than 1,000 miles from Dallas to Grand Rapids, Michigan, where the portrait will be presented to Brandon's family and friends as part of an event honoring American veterans.
We were invited to participate in a citywide event called the Freedom Cruise. And we were escorted by 3 Humvees, 2 of which carried the survivors of the blast that killed Brandon. We do the public presentations because the families have this anticipation. It's something to look forward to, something to be very excited about. And then when we do the unveiling, that's when they see Brandon, and that's the most exciting point.
The ceremony will be that closure that me and Michelle have been searching for to help us pass that hump of recuperation. And it'll always be there as a lump, but at least you'll have one thing that makes you feel better.
So I'm thinking color guard retires out. They come over to the stage. It needs to be pulled off with a sense of professionalism, accuracy, and most importantly, effectiveness.
I think the spotlight is better if you guys are right on dead center stage. Boom, national anthem.
Immediate time right before a portrait presentation is not even close to anything else that I do. You don't know if your legs are going to be strong enough to hold you up.
Coming up, will Brandon's portrait meet the expectations of his family and friends? In Grand Rapids, Michigan, hundreds of people gather to witness artist Phil Taylor's presentation of Army Specialist Brandon Stout's portrait to his waiting family.
Let's pay tribute to an American hero, a local hero. So on his behalf and on behalf of a grateful nation, would you guys please rise for the entrance of the portrait of Army Specialist Brandon Stout. When I first started this 8 years ago, I lost my friend, and we learned what it means to serve and to, unfortunately, sacrifice. And then the kicker is the pain that's left behind. That was a place that we could make an impact, and that I hope we do tonight. So with that said, the parents of Brandon Stout, Tracy, Jeff, his brothers, the wounded warriors with him, Michelle, Derek. I hope that the time spent, the heart given, and whatever talent God's instilled into this hand has made some difference. So, with that said, those brown eyes, that huge smile, I know he was a character. He was full of life and could make anyone laugh and smile, and I know that. And so I hope that we have captured him. I hope he'll find that precious spot in your farmhouse. So on behalf of this group and a extremely grateful nation and the American Fallen Soldiers Project, here's your son, our American hero, Army Specialist Brandon Stout.
I pulled his portrait from the box, they felt like their son was there. Words don't even capture the way it is in that moment on the stage. You could feel the family saying, "That's my boy, that's my brother," you know, and it was there. It was more than fulfilling, it was electric. Amen, amen. Not bad lineage right here. Great family.
The following day, Phil and Lisa join the family as they hang Brandon's portrait.
I'd just like to thank everyone for being here today and to come and enjoy this day with us. Thanks, Phil and Lisa, for their incredible talent. This is like Christmas morning. We'd like to get our son out of that box and on the wall so that he can be in our presence on a daily basis. That portrait will keep Brandon alive in our hearts. We'll embrace it and look at it.
For a long time.
It'll be huge. That image is going to live on for hundreds of years, and it's going to represent him to people that have not even been born yet, and people that will want to recognize those who died from Iraq and Afghanistan. I think I accomplished that.
That's a smile I remember.
Awesome there. Especially against the cold. Man, that just makes his eyes pop.
Brush of Honor is dedicated to the brave men and women who serve in our nation's military and to the families of the fallen. Thank you for your service.